Hey, what's up? How's it going? I've been sick. Still a little nasally, so if I sound nasally, that's... Yep. Today, we're ranting, as per usual, but in a different format. Do you ever read a comic and go, this one thing pisses me off to an unreasonable extent? Well, me too, brother. And that's exactly what we're yapping about. None of these things are life-changing. Some people might not even care about these. But you know what? I do. I'm gonna be using examples to show what I mean. That's not to say that the comics that I use examples from are dookie, okay? Just that these things annoy me, and I think we could live without them. In fact, I would live more happily without them. Yeah? Without further ado, here are 5 big mistakes webcomics make. It's kinda underwhelming, huh? Past me thought making the presentation ugly on purpose was real funny. I don't know if present me is finding it as funny as the other did. Anyways, let's start with a big mistake. You know, I'll take that back. Let's start with the biggest mistake. Pissing me off. Right. Real number 1 though. Meaningless exposition. How many times have you cracked open a fresh new comic and the first half, maybe even in multiple entire episodes, are all info dump? Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I sure did that. If I wanted a novel, I would read a novel. A lot of these manhwas are adapted from web novels. I could literally go and read the novel right now if I wanted to, but I'm not. I'm not reading the novel because I don't want to read a novel, even though I could read the novel. And you know what I'm doing instead? I'm looking at a comic with little guys, and I want to see the little guys. I don't want to see the novel, or else I would be reading the novel. Oh, I forgot that one did. Oh, okay, I forgot that one came back. By congesting the intro with an info dump, you overwhelm readers with information, risk readers foregoing information, risk readers being bored and losing interest. You break the immersion, and you're telling the story. You know? And also, pissing me off. Show, don't tell, right? The best way I can describe it is think of it like this. Showing is kind of like watching a TV show, and telling is kind of like, instead of watching the show, you just get a bullet point list of events. One of these is a lot more interesting than the other, right? So basically, the goal is to show instead of tell. As you may have guessed, hope that helps. It appeals to the senses to make a reader feel like they're there and experiencing the events themselves rather than just being told a story. Here's an example to put this into practice. The fart stinks versus your stomach churns heavy as though it housed a boulder. You try holding your breath, but your throat remains aflame. Sulfur burns in the air and digs into your tongue. This fart will scar your soul. You should, in theory, be able to visualize the second one a lot more, even though, you know, they're technically saying the same thing. Important reminder, readers are smart. Unless your comic's target demographic is the population of Stupid Town, readers are smart. So let them guess. They're smart enough to make their guesses. Take that to your advantage, okay? Don't spell everything out. So that's nice, you know, show, don't tell, whatever. How do we apply this to comics? 1, as we've mentioned, let readers guess, especially if it's not critical information. And 2, don't mention what doesn't need to be mentioned and mentioned right now. When you're thinking of giving readers a kind of direct stream of information, consider these 3 things first. Doesn't need to be mentioned, doesn't need to be mentioned right now, and are readers unable to guess this with the information you've given to them as of now? If they can guess, if it doesn't need to be mentioned, any of these, don't mention it right now. Keep it for later, you know? And stuff like character backstories, for example, are something I often see very early in the comic when you want to keep those for later. You want to keep them for when the readers are invested and care about your characters. Number 2. Verb sound effects. Verb sound effects are probably among my top 10 most complained things about of all time. You might think that means I've run out of things to say about them, but no, I'm not done yet. Verb sound effects is a term used by yours truly for verbs written out like onomatopoeias. Verb sound effects are an easy way out. By transmitting information so directly, you're losing out on reader engagement. Also, it assumes that the artist isn't skilled enough to convey and or that readers are unable to extrapolate from the art the desired info. They are so easily removable. Like, you really don't need to do much to avoid these. You can just remove them, or you can use actual sounds in their place. And, you know, I'm gonna be real with you. I don't even mind them. In moderation. I usually only start noticing them when there's way too many. But, you know, ultimately, I think I can sum up my main problems with verb sound effects like this. I know. I could see it for myself. I know that he's piling a lot of it. Oh my god, this one pisses me off. So, what's the solution? Delete them. They're an unnecessary reliance on text. They're redundant, and the art's clear enough already. Don't need them. And, well, if you feel like the art isn't clear enough, I don't know, man. Just kidding, but you got scared, huh? I bet you feel so foolish and foolish now. Yep. Yep. Here are not 1, not 2, but 3 solutions to avoid relying on verb sound effects. Number 1. Change the verb, adjective, or adverb to an actual sound. So an onomatopoeia. Or you can even put in exclamations like, ugh, ah. You know, I'm like, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop. There are other people living here. I've embarrassed myself enough. Example 1. Instead of just writing out chuckle, you could do this. Conveys the same thing. We know that he's smiling. We know that he's like, a little amused, a little smug, perhaps. Example 2. Example dos, if you're feeling like Spanish. If you're feeling like Spanish, I guess. Where is that going with that? Instead of guffaw, I think I just don't like guffaw as a word. Literally just haha. Number 2. Modify the appearance of the dialogue. How could we do this? We could change fonts. You know, if there's something fun or loud or dramatic, you could use a font that's more conducive to that vibe. You can capitalize stuff. You can change the color of the speech, right? If it's intense, you can make it like red. Red's a color. You can do that. Yep. So you can modify speech bubble shape and size. Play with, you know, the size of the text in the speech bubble. All of that good stuff. Example 3. Instead of putting shout, you can do this. You know he's shouting. There is no question about it. You know, and I'm suggesting these if you don't feel like there is clear enough, if you would like to do more. But honestly, basically every panel that I put on here was clear enough. Like, I would have still understood the point, even if you just deleted the text and made no other changes. Número 3. What? Oh my god. Okay. I don't know what's wrong with me today. You know what? We'll move on. You can modify the other visuals of the panel, like direction lines, movement lines. The difference is direction lines just like bring the focus, right? Whereas movement lines would be like sometimes you'll see art when they move, you'll see like lines kind of shooting out to indicate that they're moving quickly. You can also change the angle of their perspective, right? If you want something to show like, oh, you really want to show their face, you could like zoom in, have a panel of only their face. You could have it zoomed really far out and just like see a tiny person in a really big forest to convey a sense of like a loneliness, you know, solitude. You can play with background colors. Example 4. This one is very minimal change because you can kind of already tell what's going on. I literally just removed the text, and here would be movement lines as an example. They're little lines shooting out. They're pretty discreet, but it's just to show, okay, he's moving up. You can also use blur that they've used here to show that it's moving. All depends on the style you want to go for. Number 3, flat patterns. Similar to the last one, mostly gets to me when there's a lot of it. Either it's done often or on large surfaces. And again, it's like the verb sound effect. It's not even hard to fix. A little warp goes a long way. See what I did there? See what I did there? Get it? Because the warp is small and the way is stretched. It's long. Please tell me you left, guys. It kind of pulls the eye and messes up perspective. And even if you can't tell what the issue is, most people can probably look at it and go, that's not quite right, you know? And like I said, even a half-arsed fix makes a big difference. Here are examples. It's just the pattern's flat. It does not follow the flow of the fabric. Same here. That blanket does not look like it's at an angle, even though it is drawn like it is at an angle. It's the pattern that's messing it up. So please, a little warp goes a long way, please. And now for the tutorial, because this is the video where I finally put my money where my mouth is. So there's this feature in Clip Studio called Mesh Transform. It's kind of like Liquidify, and you can use this to make flat patterns look a lot more fitted on clothing. So let's say, ignore the broken pattern, I just made it in like a minute. Let's say I have this really cool shirt that I want to put on my drop. You just get the pattern on the shirt and you do no other modifications. You just leave it like this. Very flat, it kind of messes with your eye. The shirt looks a lot more 3D and fitted without it, and then you add the pattern. You can find it right here, or you can also go in Edit, Transformation, and Mesh Transformation. And by doing that, you can just like warp stuff, right? It looks better if you do it in smaller sections, I find. But what you can still do is just like make it a little bit more fitting. Right? So there are better ways to do this. It obviously does work better. The pattern's not shit and broken. Depending on how detailed you want to go, you can even do little sections. Like I can like specifically, because the sleeve is being pulled in a different direction, and you don't even have to do it very well for the effect to be a lot better. Same thing here, so it's just depending on what you do, sometimes, you know, it's better to do it in a different order, but for the sake of demonstration, I'm gonna do it like really easy. That already looks a lot more 3D, even with the odd cuts and stuff, it looks more 3D. I usually like to lower opacity a little bit, or looks a lot more on the shirt than before. That we've taken care of that. Number 4. The true beauty syndrome. It's when a comic tries a little bit too hard to make a character hot, right? Even in moments where they should be crying, horrified, experiencing intense emotion, they can never look emotional, truly. Emotion is not that cute, right? You get wrinkles, you get a bunch of stuff, but all of that's put aside for the character to be hot 24/7. And it's usually conventionally attractive. Everything is a sub-priority. Why True Beauty? It's a popular comic. It's part of Webtoon. It kind of helped build up Webtoon to what we know it to be today. It was one of the big comics that originally gave it that boost when it was first starting up-ish. It's not like the first or anything, but it's contributed to that. It is kind of the first example I encountered of this, perhaps one of the biggest examples, because it is very popular. The main character is supposed to be ugly, bullied for her looks, and she's just like the same as when she's quote unquote hot, but she's not wearing makeup, has like one pimple, and wears glasses. What? It does just as I described. It sacrifices emotion and message, I guess, of the comic, so its characters can always look hot. Feels less authentic, if you will. Not only is it one of like the OG comics, but a lot of times when comics are guilty of doing this whole thing, they will have a style that is relatively similar to True Beauty, where it's like that very like classic manhwa style, where it's like more realistic proportions than anime, but there's still this like, you know, they still take creative liberties and whatnot. And, you know, just one last note to leave it on. I forgot about that. My issues with it leads to same face syndrome. Everyone looks a little bit too similar because you're not only trying to make them all attractive, you're trying to make them usually conventionally attractive as well. That restricts the options quite a bit. Additionally, a lack of expression, because you're always trying to be attractive, but expressions, they're not always that cute. This lack of expression often can lead to an overuse of verb sound effects to compensate. Instead of like drawing a character that is very shocked, you'll just write like shocked. And also because, as I've mentioned, conventionally attractive, pretty limiting, it leads to a lack of personality, age, and diversity in features. Even older people, they might have like a mouth wrinkle, maybe an eye wrinkle, but like nothing too crazy. Sometimes it leads to uncanny valley, where things are just like a little too realistic, but like not quite there, right? There's just like a little like, something's not right. Like if I saw you at the foot of my bed in the middle of the night, I would kind of freak out, you know? And finally, just trying way too hard to make characters pretty, like chill. It's not that deep, okay? It's really not that deep. What's the solution to this then? Go ugly. Jump scare! Life and expressions are inherently ugly. Don't be afraid to exaggerate. It's an advantage that comics have over real life. When you're working with real people, unless you're working with like Jim Carrey, there's a limited amount of expression you can truly convey in a face alone. But this isn't real life. You can exaggerate things. You can really play up stuff. And it is something I feel like certain comics just do not take advantage of when they really could and should. So you may have noticed the examples on the right side of my little slide. I go extreme. You don't have to go that extreme, right? You really don't. Oh, look, these are motion lines too, right? And the character doesn't have to be ugly every panel. Do not fear. Your character can be hot and expressive, right? Like it's a balancing act. And, you know, by mixing it up, you make moments of emotion and beauty more meaningful. Wrinkles. Wrinkles are your best friend. I know a lot of artists can be scared of them. Do not be scared of them. I've had people comment on like, well, your stuff's so expressive. Yeah, wrinkles. You want to see an expert at wrinkles? Just look at anything by Meat Canyon. You want to see expression? You want to see wrinkles at play? When I think wrinkles, I think Meat Canyon. And finally, number 5, character intro cards. Need I say more? Need I say more? Most comics don't limit themselves to one. Again, it's in numbers, right? If you did it like one time, I'd let it slide. But a lot of these, it's so many times that it is very noticeable. And that's where the issue comes in. That's where I start complaining. I don't need to be spoon-fed character info. I'm a big kid. I can assume this myself. It's useless. It's useless, okay? Cease. And some characters just don't need an intro. Just general, they just don't, right? A background character that never shows up again in the story, don't need an intro. Skip, okay? We don't need a card. And again, it's another instance of telling instead of showing. For example, these two, they hold absolutely no relevance in the story. This guy, we could assume, and this, well, we literally got her intro already. We didn't need another one, all right? So just don't. Sometimes these intro cards are poorly integrated in dialogue. So this, you know, in combination with cards, nuh-uh. I'm about to delete my own startup files if you get to my roof. Leads to it leads to an unnatural address of people by titles or names mid-conversation. Dialogue tip: address people by title or name when you're opening a dialogue or conversation. Mid-convo, you usually address people with you when you're talking directly to them, at least. Notable exceptions are honorifics. Just delete it. My solution for this one is just to delete it. I don't have much else to say. Alternatives, however, if you do wish for them, is introducing through dialogue. Be careful not to abuse this though, because you're gonna end up with like the poor integration thing I've mentioned. Here's an example of introducing through dialogue. My bad, guys. I actually meant introduce through context clues. Yep. While I'm here, can I just say what was wrong with me that day? I think a little bit too much mucus got up my nose to my brain. We know that she's a princess. She calls a man father. Therefore, we can assume that he is either a king or an emperor. A couple of final words just to wrap it up nice. If you've ever done any of these things, or if something you're reading has ever done any of this, don't think I'm calling it garbage, right? If you've ever done this, it's fine, right? It doesn't, doing any of these doesn't mean it's immediately garbage. They're just small things. However, they make a cumulative difference in the polish of a story, right? These are pet peeves at most. They annoy me, and they're very common. Some people might not care. However, I care. So I'm your because this is my channel. I'm not fixing anything, right? I know I included examples, but I want to make it clear that I'm not fixing anything. I'm just making it a little bit more conducive to storytelling. There are a variety of skills that you need to work on something like a comic, right? A book, you need to be good at words. But for comic, there's a lot of different visual aspects interacting with the writing. And, you know, it's a lot. So I'm not necessarily fixing it. It's just, but I'm not saying it's objectively better or that I fixed it. Corporation standards are different. The standards for a comic released by Webtoon weekly is not going to be the same as a standard for an indie creator who posts weekly, right? There's a lot more people working on it. There's a lot more money put into it. A lot of times it's these people's full-time jobs. It's just, you can't evaluate these on the same standard. And that's why I'm always going to be more critical of company endorsed or published webtoons. And finally, making bad stuff is okay, right? Like I said, this doesn't mean that your stuff is bad or that it's garbage. But I feel like it's a good reminder for anyone who's making anything that it's okay to make bad stuff. You are going to make bad stuff whether you want to or not. But you're making a thing, right? And that's pretty cool, right? You can always go back and change things once you've improved, but you gotta do the bad stuff to then do better stuff. Hopefully you enjoyed watching. Hopefully you learned something or at least had fun. And, you know, if you have anything to say, any thoughts, whether, you know, you agree, disagree, feel free to go in the comments. I would love to have a discussion, you know, if you disagree with anything I've said. And everyone except the people in my walls, have a wonderful day. You know who you are. Yeah. Got 'em.